I call upon the spirit of the owl, messenger of wisdom. Welcome to the Temple of the Owl. Merry meet, seekers of knowledge. I am your host, Matt Owl. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day. Sending you guys some good positive vibes out there if you need them today. Here at the Temple of the Owl, located deep in the forests of Northern California. In this episode, we will discuss Egyptian magic. And this is where we talk about spirituality and magic, but it's through the perspective of a modern witch. As always, these are just ideas to help you live a magical life and think about things differently. Take the information and do what you will. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for listening on the YouTube and the Spotify. Special thank you for those listening on the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. Also check out templeoftheowl.com. All my episodes are going to be up there. Thank you guys for making the website and making it all possible. So I thank you guys for listening. So just starting off, I want to do this episode because I like Egyptian themes and things like that, and the way that they did their stuff back then. So I want to do this episode talking about Egyptian magic. So I realized early, there's more to this world than what could be seen. And the journey led me to discover the religion of witchcraft and explore magic. And so the Temple of the Owl is a place where we can learn together. And my goal is to make people think about things differently. Well, I like to start the show with what I call the MOD, or the message of the day. It's a quote I find that helps me explain the show topic. And today's quote is some wisdom from Hemotep. And the saying is, "Do not be proud because you are learned. Consult with the ignorant as with the wise." And that's it's one of the oldest surviving works of wisdom and literature, dating from around 2400 BCE. Now, I called this episode Egyptian Paganism because we're talking about the religion of the Nile. So tonight, we're traveling back more than 5,000 years to the fertile banks of the Nile River to explore one of the longest lasting and most fascinating religions in human history. Now, this religion endured for over 3,000 years, influencing not only the ancient world, but also modern witchcraft, ceremonial magic, and occult philosophy. And we talk about contemporary Kemetic paganism. So step into the temples of Egypt. But when people hear the word paganism, they often imagine it as a single religion. But in reality, paganism is an umbrella term that encompasses many different religions, and it honors multiple deities, and it recognizes the sacredness of nature. Now, ancient Egyptian religion was one of those traditions. The Egyptians did not separate religion from everyday life. Religion was woven into the framing of everything they did, like farming, politics, art, and death, and even the rising and the setting of the sun. To the Egyptians, the universe was alive with divine intelligence. Every river, every star, every animal, and every human was connected to the gods. And the foundation of everything was the god Maat, M-A-A-T. If there's one concept that you should remember about Egyptian spirituality, it's that Maat represents truth, justice, balance, harmony, and order, the natural law of the universe. Maat was both a goddess and a principle. Living in accordance with Maat meant living honestly, treating others fairly, and respecting nature, maintaining harmony with the world. Now, this idea remains meaningful today. Many modern witches strive to balance their lives, recognizing that magic is not only about spells, but also about living in harmony with yourself and with others, and with the natural world. The Egyptian pantheon was vast. Several deities become especially influential. Let's talk about Ra. Ra was a great solar deity. Each morning he sailed across the sky in his solar boat, bringing light to the world, and each evening he descended into the underworld, where he battled the serpent Apophis, before the rising dawn again. His journey symbolized resilience, renewal, and hope. And I like that, talking about Ra on his boat, protecting us every night. They battle they battle the enemy, the evil, and then every day he comes back. Let's talk about Isis. The Egyptian goddess is better known as Isis. She embodied healing, motherhood, magic, and protection. Now, after the murder of her husband, Osiris, Isis used her magical knowledge to restore him long enough to conceive their son, Horus. She became a model of divination, perseverance, and powerful magic. Many modern witches admire Isis as an archetype of compassion and determination and transformative power. The story of Osiris, he ruled the underworld and he represented protection, resurrection, fertility, and eternal life. His story reminds us that endings are often followed by new beginnings. The cycle of death and rebirth appears throughout many pagan traditions, and it reflects the changing of the seasons in nature. And their son, Horus, the falcon-headed god, represented kingship, courage, and divine protection. His famous Eye of Horus remains one of the world's most recognized protective symbols. And many people today wear that symbol of healing, wisdom, and spiritual awareness. We also have Anubis. Now, Anubis guided souls through death. He was depicted with the head of a jackal, and he protected the tombs and oversaw the weighing of the heart. Despite his association with death, Anubis was not to be feared. He was viewed as a guardian who helped souls safely transition into the next stage of his existence. Up next we have Thoth. For many witches, Thoth is especially fascinating. He was the god of writing, magic, wisdom, and science, and astrology, and knowledge itself. We credit Thoth with inventing writing and preserving sacred wisdom. They associated him with the legendary Emerald Tablets. And, I love those stories about how Thoth created the Emerald Tablets. Up next we have Bastet. Now, Egyptian paganism would not be complete without Bastet, a cat-headed goddess. She represented protection, music, fertility, and the home. Now, cats were deeply represented in ancient Egypt, partly because they protected grain stores from rodents, but because they became symbols of grace and guardianship. The connection helps explain why cats remain closely associated with witchcraft and folklore. The Egyptians, they worshipped the gods, but they did not use the word magic like we use today. They spoke of what they call Heka. Now, Heka referred to both a deity and the sacred power that permeated creation. And magic was not viewed as unnatural. It was considered one of the forces that maintained the universe. Priests, healers, and ordinary people used prayers, protective amulets, and spoken words, the rituals for daily life. The Egyptians believed that words possessed creative power. To speak a sacred name was to invoke its presence. Many modern magical practitioners share similar appreciation for the intention and symbolism of ritual. One of the most famous texts is commonly known as the Book of the Dead. Rather than being a single book, it's a collection of spells, prayers, and guidance intended to help the deceased navigate the afterlife. A central scene describes the weighing of the heart. Now, the heart is placed on one side of a scale, and the other represents the feather of Mat. If the heart is lighter than the feather, symbolizing a life lived with integrity, the soul may continue into the afterlife. Now, if not, the heart is consumed by the fearsome Amit. Now, this story reminds us that how we live matters more than what we possess. The Egyptian temples were considered the homes of the gods. Priests performed daily rituals that included lighting incense and offering food, and pouring sacred water, reciting hymns, and caring for the divine statues. Now, these rituals were performed because the gods needed them, but because they symbolized maintaining harmony between humanity and the divine. The opening of the mouth ceremony is one of the most important rituals in ancient Egyptian religion. It was performed to specifically restore the senses of the deceased person, or, in some cases, a divine statue, so that the spirit world could eat, breathe, and see and hear in the afterlife. Now, this ritual reflects the Egyptian belief that death was not an end, but a transition from another form of existence. The ritual typically took place just before the mummy or the coffin was placed in the tomb, and its purpose was, but they believed that although the body had been preserved through mummification, it still needed to be spiritually awakened. The ceremony was intended to restore speech, sight, and hearing, to allow the deceased to receive food and drink and offerings, and prepare the soul for eternal life. Without this ritual, many Egyptians believed the deceased not fully function in the afterlife. Usually the ceremony was led by priests, often wearing the mask of the jackal-headed god Anubis, the divine protector of embalming and ceremonies. Family members also participated by bringing offerings and reciting prayers. One of the most recognizable tools was the parish, a ritual instrument originally associated with childbirth. In funerary rites, it symbolized giving the deceased new birth into the afterlife. Priests also used incense, holy oils, and water for purification. They used linen garments. The priest touched various parts of the mummy or the statue: the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the mouth. Each touch was accompanied by prayers and asking the gods to restore the senses. The priest might proclaim words similar in the meaning to, "May your mouth be opened, may you breathe the sweet air. May your eyes behold the light of the sun." And these acts were symbolic, not medical. They represented spiritual renewal. Now, mummification itself was sacred. It was a ritual lasting about 70 days, and the process included washing the body and removing the internal organs, and drying the body with salt, wrapping it in linen, and placing protective amulets in between each layer. They recited sacred spells, and each step was accompanied by prayers. Now, we already talked about. Sorry, my cat. We already talked about the weighing of the heart, the weighing of a heart against the feather. The heart was heavy with wrongdoing. It was devoured by the creature Amit. Now, every morning the priests called for the cult statue of a god that was through serving a living being. They would take the statue and they would bathe it. They would dress it. And they would apply perfumes and oils. They would offer it bread and beer. And they would light incense and recite hymns, only trained by the priests that entered the innermost sanctuary. Now, food offerings were believed to nourish the deceased or the gods spiritually. Typical offerings included bread and beer, and they would light incense and flowers and give offerings reflected gratitude and maintain the harmony between the human and the divine worlds. They also did purification rituals. Now, purity was essential before entering sacred spaces. The priests would often bathe several times a day, shave their heads and bodies, and wore clean white linen, and avoided certain foods or activities before rituals. The purification symbolized the order overcoming chaos. They also had religious festivals. They brought the gods into public view. One famous celebration was the Opet festival, during which statues of Amun, Mut, and Kanu were carried in grand processions throughout the temples. They had music, feasting, and prayers accompanied by these celebrations. They used incense and represented purification and prayers rising to the heavens. They used frankincense and myrrh and cedar oil. And they used lotus perfume. The priests anointed statues, sacred objects, and sometimes the mummies with these oils. Now, the Egyptians did not shapely separate religion from magic. The concept of Heka referred to the divine force that made ritual effective. Magic was used for healing, protection, and royal ceremonies and funerary rites. They were spoken alongside the ritual and the actions because the words themselves were believed to have creative power. They also had the Sed festival. After ruling for many years, a pharaoh celebrated the Sed festival to renew royal strength and reaffirm the divine right to rule. The ceremony included processions and ritual running and symbolic feasts of vigor and offerings renewing the king's bond with the gods. Now, why do these rituals matter today? Many modern pagan and witchcraft traditions draw inspiration from ancient Egyptian practices. They're not direct continuations of them, but elements such as purification with water or incense, lighting candles, and making offerings to the deities, reciting invocations, and creating sacred space, and honoring the cycles of life and death. They echo the themes throughout the ancient Egyptian religion. Understanding the original historical context helps appreciate the practices, while recognizing that contemporary traditions have developed their own distinct ways. Although the ancient temples eventually closed, Egyptian religion did not disappear forever. Today, many people practice Kemetic paganism, also known as Kemeticism. Modern Kemetics honor the ancient Egyptian gods while adapting their own practices for contemporary life. Some celebrate festivals and make offerings. Some meditate with Mat and other deities like Isis, Anubis, Thoth, and Bastet. The practices and the beliefs vary from one practitioner to the other. Now, why does that matter today? Egyptian paganism continues to inspire people because its teachings remain remarkably relevant. Honor the truth, seek wisdom, protect balance, and respect nature. Remember that your ancestors and live with integrity. Now, these lessons are transcended through time. Whether you approach Egyptian mythology as history, religion, or spiritual inspiration, it invites us to ask enduring questions about life and death, justice, and our own place within the cosmos. The temples of Egypt may stand in ruins, but their stories continue to speak. The Nile still flows, and the pyramids still rise in the desert sky. The names Isis, Osiris, Thoth, Bastet, and Anubis, and Ra are still remembered thousands of years later. Perhaps that's the greatest magic of all. Not spells, not curses, or hidden treasures, but the wisdom that survives across millennia. As witches and seekers, we study these traditions not to become ancient Egyptians ourselves, but to learn from a civilization that sought harmony with the universe through reverence and a lifelong pursuit of knowledge. Thank you guys for journeying with me here at the Temple of the Owl. I hope you guys liked this episode. I'd like to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments. Do you guys have Egyptian deities? Like, which one fascinates you the most? Was it the wisdom of Thoth, the protection of Bastet, or the healing of Isis? Or what about the guiding hand of Anubis? Leave the comments in the if you guys want. But until next time, continue seeking knowledge and question what you think you know. Never stop exploring those mysteries that are hidden just behind the veil. Well, I want to thank you guys for listening. Thank you for listening on the Temple of the Owl. Thank you guys for listening. Check out templeoftheowl.com and also check out troubleminds.org. And thank you guys for listening on the Troubled Minds Radio Network, KUAP Digital Broadcasting. This is Matt Owl. Thank you guys for journeying with me on the Temple of the Owl. Release the spirit of the owl. Thank you guys. Blessed be.
For many centuries, witchcraft has been considered evil, associated with the devil and all things dark. Let's break these stereotypes with your host, Matt Owl, at the Temple of the Owl. Let's talk about magic of the old ways, explore the many roles of the witch, learn the tools of the craft, the history of the science behind